Students, welcome to online classes. In this lecture today I am going to discuss with you all fourth unit, that is multinational companies, but as per our Bangalore University I think it is given in the second half of the third unit, so you can consider either third unit or fourth unit. Okay, so under this multinational companies we are going to cover different aspects, advantages and disadvantages, and the factors that are responsible for the growth of multinational companies in various countries of the world, especially India. Focusing India as a hub for various multinational companies is the focus point of this particular lecture. So basically, if we are talking about multinational companies, it refers to those companies which are either from those companies which are operating in India and stepping out into other countries of the world for the expansion of business activity, or any other companies from foreign countries are entering into India for the purpose of their business expansion, for utilizing the opportunities in our country. So here, if we are talking about multinational companies as a meaning, so those companies which are operating in more than two countries of the world, so we have to consider it as a multinational company. And I also have mentioned in the class that it is not only those companies which are having all the functional departments in the other countries, even one or two branches of the company, if it spreads to other countries of the world for the purpose of either marketing the products or services, or it may be because of the information technology or BPOs, it is also considered as multinational companies. And if we are talking about stages of multinational companies, we have discussed this in the other chapters as well. Stages of multinational companies. In the first unit itself we have discussed, actually there are 5 important stages of multinational companies. Before a company is called as a multinational company, the very first step is domestic company. It is because mainly when any business is established in a home country, they will be utilizing the opportunities that are available in the home country, home market, as well as it is very easy to understand the choice and preferences, priorities, income status of the customers in the market. So at that time they also adopt an approach called ethnocentric approach, where the products and services that are produced in the first stage will be mainly and mostly for the home markets. At that time there is no intention of the businessmen to call their company as a multinational company, even if they have a vision of converting the company into a multinational corporation. But in the first stage they will not step at once to that particular level, but they start slowly and gradually they grow up to multinational level. So that is why in the first stage of multinational company it is called as domestic company. The second stage, once the organization grows to such a greater extent where the profits becomes more and more achievable, and if they capture the markets and the profits are growing and the production capacity of the organization increases to such an extent, so at one point of time the supply exceeds the home demand. It is not because there is a deterioration in the demand for the products and services of that particular brand, but it is mainly because of the increased production capacities of the organization leads to increase in the supply of the goods and services than the existing home demand. This is an opportunity at this point of time for the organization to think about converting the organization into international company. So that is the second stage of multinational corporation, where it is a stage of internationalization, we can call it as, because they will not think about other countries' markets, but whatever the excess that is available in their organization after meeting the home demand, the excess is going to the foreign markets for the purpose of just utilizing the opportunities available. So that is the second stage, what we call it as international companies. The third stage is multinational companies, looking into the available opportunities outside in the other countries of the world. They also target the profits that are available in the foreign markets. It becomes more and more attractive for the organizations to expand their business activities. So at that time, as they step into various other far off countries and far off markets, so it becomes inevitable to expand any one of the business departments to that particular country in order to handle it very carefully as well as profitably. So that is a stage where we call it as multinational corporations, where any one or few of the departments of the organization will be expanded to other countries of the world. The fourth stage is global companies. It is almost the end of the multinational company stage, where the companies becomes highly branded ones and the business magnates, and they also achieve all the vision that they have set for. They become the business magnates, profits are very good, and the opportunities are well utilized in the foreign and host markets. So at that time, they start that particular market and also cover the surrounding markets that in the host market. So that is where, when they start utilizing the other available opportunities in the foreign markets, they step into a stage called global companies. So when it becomes a global company, definitely it is not one or two functional departments are sufficient, but also various other departments need to be coordinated, because they are expanding the markets in the host market to other surrounding markets as well in the host country. So that is where the investments is increasing, profits are increasing. Now they are also catering the requirements of the foreign market customers. So there will be product diversifications as well. There will be increase and improvement in the level of technology utilized, and also the product quality, brand values of the products and services also reaches to highest extents. So that is where they call themselves as global companies, because they will be operating throughout the globe. At least most of the countries will be targeted at this level. The last and final stage of multinational companies is transnational companies. Transnational, where it is considered to be an independent unit, and wherever it is running its business. That is, it is not only acting as a branch in the host market, but it will get an individualistic identity as a brand in the foreign countries. So now it is not acting as a branch unit for the mother unit in the home country, but it will be acting as an independent entity in the foreign markets. So that is why we call it as transnational companies. So there are 5 stages of MNCs: domestic companies, international companies, multinational companies, global companies, and transnational companies. Next topic is factors for the growth of MNCs. So there are few factors that led to the growth of multinational companies as well as the growth of international business. So first factor is expansion of market territory. So as we know, after globalization, as we have adopted free trade policy in most of the countries of the world, there is no restriction for the export or import or expansion of the business activities in the world. So as for the purpose of utilizing the opportunities, market opportunities available worldwide, many companies, organizations are expanding their business activities. That is a reason why there is a drastic growth of multinational corporations after globalization, which is also indirectly leading to a positive international business. Second factor is market superiorities. See, as we know, many multinational corporations are enjoying these market superiorities because of the availability of more and reliable updated information, as well as they have a higher brand value and less difficulties in manufacturing goods and services because of the high level of technology, effective advertising and other promotion techniques, which led to achieve the factor of market superiorities. As they are superior in all these terms, it has become very easy and convenient for them to achieve the brand value. That is one of the factor for the growth of multinational corporations. Third factor is financial superiorities. As I told you, many companies which are operating, say for example in India, are from other advanced countries of the world. And as we all know, India is a growing opportunity for these companies because India is a developing country. So there is still underutilization of the available resources. So in order to utilize these resources available, India doesn't have so much of financial capabilities. So this particular loophole is utilized, make use of these multinational companies when they stepped into our country. That is, as they are capitally very strong countries, when they entered our country as a multinational corporation, they started investing their money into our business activities or the opportunities for utilizing the resources that are available. So that is what is called as financial superiorities. Then technological superiorities. One reason why India really required to step into international business is this reason, because technology is not an easy task. Even though we undertake so many research and development, our technology is not so very good compared to other advanced countries of the world. So we are aiming for importing or utilizing the technology, advanced technology that are available in the rest of the world. So it is possible only through collaborations or any other mode of international business. Only then it is possible to achieve or get to utilize the latest technologies of the world or the sophisticated technologies of the world. So that is one reason for the growth of MNCs. Then product innovations. So MNCs are best suited for product innovations because of all the above mentioned factors. They are superior in markets, their brand value is very high, they are financially very good, they are technologically very advanced. So due to all these reasons, it is very easy for them to do any kind of product innovations and also cater the requirements of the people of the world. So they are able to even achieve the choice and preferences of the customers throughout the world, and that is one of the reasons for the growth of MNCs in the world. The next topic what we are going to discuss is organization structure. See, generally if we are talking about organization structure, we have studied about all this vertical organization structure where we have a higher hierarchical chain of command, where the accountability relationship between the superiors and subordinates, accountability lies from the subordinates to superiors, and the authority lies from superiors to subordinates. All these we have studied. And similarly, horizontal or flat organization, where the hierarchical chain of command is completely flat there. It is mainly because of the increased empowerment, or business firms have adopted this kind of flat organization structure because of the increased education, increased responsibilities, etc. All this we have studied. What exactly we are going to focus under this particular topic is the approaches of organization structure, which is also very important for your exam. Under this, we are going to discuss 5 organization structure, which we call it as approaches to organization structure. Each one comes with a different flow chart, which I'm going to explain it now. The first one is product organization structure. So as the title itself says, product organization structure. See, when an organization divides all the activities on the basis of different product line or the services are grouped into different departments, then it is called as product organization structure. You can see that in the flow chart. See, the highest authority is the managing director. Head office will act as a support department, which will be usually in the home market, and below that particular level there will be product divisions. So as we see in this particular illustration of the flow chart, there are 5 product line which is mentioned here from A to E. So each product line will have different heads who are going to look after the production as well as sales and other 5 functional departments related to that product only. That is, for example, if product A is handled by a particular person, he will have to manage all 5 functional departments of production, marketing, human resource, finance, as well as research and development related to product developments or product innovations, etc. So like that, each product will have different heads who are going to look after the development of that particular product only. So that is what is called as product organization structure. This kind of organization structure is adopted where in those organizations where there are many products that are manufactured under their brand name. It is more complicated task if they combine different product lines and different functional departments. It becomes more confusing. For that reason, they are going to adopt this kind of organization structure because it is easy, convenient, comfortable, and also more clarity can be given by each and every product line heads to the highest authority of the organization. Okay, that is why this kind of organization structure is adopted. See, you have to even know about the advantages and disadvantages of each product, each organization structure here, because that will be one of the question asked in the exam. Next one, moving on to the next organization structure, that is geographical organization structure. So geographical, dividing or grouping the activities of the organization based on geographical regions where they are operating. So here in the flow chart it is also clearly shown. So authority in the organization is the managing directors. Headquarters will have the control over all 5 functional departments. You can see in the second level of the flow chart, which states headquarters managers, production, marketing, finance, human resource, and research and development. After this level, the entire organization will be divided according to regional operations. Regional operations includes here, as per flowchart, is one in Africa, one in Asia, Europe, North America, and South America. So all 5 functional departments are going to be distributed by headquarters, who are going to provide whatever the required necessary assistance to each geographical region regarding any kind of products and services that are produced and sold in that particular region. The main reason for adopting this kind of organization structure is it is better to design the products and services according to cultural needs of the people, where as we know, different geographical regions will have different types of cultural backgrounds. Choice and preferences will vary, affordability will vary. So to cater the requirements of the people all around the world in different geographical regions, this kind of organization structure is adopted. And also it is very useful for producing and distributing the products in different nations or different globe locations, which gives an opportunity to serve the consumer very well throughout the world. So that is why this kind of organization structure is adopted. Next one we are going to discuss is decentralized business unit. In a diversified firm, the basic organization building blocks are its business units, and each one is going to operate as a standalone profit center. So the core key word is the standalone profit center. Each business stream will be a profit earning firm or a stream of business activity for the organizer. That is, as he is aiming for bringing the maximum profit from each business line, it is very difficult for him to handle every business stream sitting in the home country and managing throughout the world is very difficult. So where he is going to divide the organization on the basis of decentralized business unit. So if I explain this with the help of flowchart, it says managing director is the highest authority, and the headquarters in the home country will manage production, marketing, finance, human resource, and research and development. All 5 functional departments will be under the control of the highest authority of the organization in the headquarters, which will be home country only. And after this level, the business will be divided it into different streams, which will be handed over to chief manager for each business stream. So that is shown in the flowchart: chief manager for business X, business Y, and business Z. So entire business is divided it into different decentralized streams, which will be under the control of chief manager. So these chief managers are going to look after all the product lines and services that are grouped under their business streams. So here, suppose chief manager for business X is looking after two products. Say for example, product A and product B are produced and sold in some other part of the world, in that host market. He will be responsible for looking after the production as well as sales of those two products. So like that, they are not dividing the organization on the basis of the product line, but they are dividing it in the form of the business streams which are more demanded in that particular part of the world. And then below chief manager for business, they'll have the assistant managers for marketing, finance manager, production manager, human resource manager, and manager for R&D, etc., who are going to assist these chief managers in various business units, business centers, wherever they are operating throughout the world. So that is decentralized business unit, and this kind of decentralized business unit is more profitable when the business is completely diversified and it is spread to different far off countries of the world. It becomes very difficult for the highest authority of the organization to handle the business as a core business. So it is better to hand over that among various chief managers who are more experienced, and it is also convenient to target and keep the track of all the business activity that is going on in different parts of the world. So that is why decentralized business units are more efficient for such organizations. The next one is strategic business units. So strategy. So based on different strategies here, strategic business units are formed under different heads who are called as group managers. So that is what the core aim of this particular business approach. So according to which all the activities are divided into two business units, which is called as strategic business unit, and it will be handed over to a senior executive who are going to delegate the authority and also responsibility over those units which they are operating. So as per flowchart, managing director is the authority once again, and he will be assisted by higher level of managers who are going to control the entire organization's 5 functional departments of marketing, finance, production, human resource and R&D in the headquarters. After this level, the business is divided it into strategic business units who are going to be, which are going to be handled by group managers, which is shown in the flowchart, SBU, that is strategic business unit 1, 2, 3, under the control of group managers. Below them, or they are assisted by strategically related business units which act as a subsidiary for SBU. It is where, suppose if it is they are functioning in different countries of the world, if they have any subsidiaries in that particular market or surrounding market, they are called as strategically related business units. Then matrix organization structure. So modern organizations, as we know, it is more complicated and interlinked, and complicated tasks are also handled by them. So it is better to have a dual chain of control and command over these activities that they are performing. And also, as we know, as impact of globalization, these organizations are not only functioning in surrounding regions and countries, but they are also spread throughout the world in different far off countries of the world. So that's a reason why dual control of command over these activities is essential. So that is why this kind of approach is created, which is called as matrix organization structure. So under this, the dual chain of command, as I was telling from the beginning of this point, it is inclusive of functional managers and project managers. So which is very much shown in the flowchart, you can see very well. So as we know, managing director, general managers, and then we have 5 functional departments headed by the functional managers for human resource management, finance, then we have production, marketing and R&D. So they are called as functional managers. So they are going to control their stream of functional department. Suppose if there is a functional manager for human resource, he is going to have control over all the business units, okay, that are the branches that are operating worldwide, and all the human resource related activities will be under the control of this particular functional managers. And when we know that the business is spread throughout the world and it is operating as branches in various other countries of the world, there will be so many projects and the works that are performed by various specialists. So there must be a command over those activities and the specialists, so which will be looked after by the project managers in various countries of the world, which is depicted in the flow chart as project manager for country A, project manager for country B and C, etc. So that is the dual chain of command. One side from the headquarters with the functional managers who are going to control, and simultaneously even the project managers in that particular country are going to handle the task very well in order to avoid any complications in the business activity. So there ends the approaches of business organization, and once again I am reminding you all, it's very important topic for your exam. It is section C question. The next topic is multinational companies relationship with the headquarters and subsidiaries. See, as we know, headquarters, and from even in the previous topic I said headquarters will be always in the home country and subsidiaries are the branches which are operating in other countries of the world. There must be a proper relation, cordial business relations between headquarters and subsidiaries in order to smoothly function the organization, and also even to achieve the success and to achieve the goals that they have set for. When business becomes more and more bigger and bigger day by day, it becomes very complicated to handle the business activity, as well as to keep the track of business activity also becomes very, very difficult. So in this situation, it is very, very essential to keep the cordial relations with the headquarters and subsidiaries. So what are the important aspects that need to be taken care of in order to maintain a cordial relations between headquarters and subsidiaries? So first one under that is information sharing. See, as we know, it is very, very essential. They have to share each and every information between the headquarters and subsidiaries. That is, all the subsidiaries and branches that are operating throughout the world, they have to share the information to their headquarters, what is happening in their business activity, in their branches. It may be related to any functional department. It may be related to investment. It may be related to profits. It may be related to any on day-to-day basis ongoing problems that they are facing, or it may be related to marketing aspects, or it may be related to the competition that they are facing in the foreign host markets, or it may be the issues related to human resource, or it may be issues related to the policies of the government in the host country, etc. So all the information, even the minute information that they have to share between to their headquarters in order to maintain the track of the business activity that is happening in the other countries of the world. Second aspect is related to resource sharing. So there should not be any kind of restriction when it comes to headquarters and subsidiaries in respect of the resource sharing. Suppose if any branches requires the resources, so it is quite obvious the headquarters should give a helping hand to share the resources, and even vice versa. Even the subsidiaries, if they have, it may be related to capital, or it may be related to the technology, or it may be related to any managerial required problems or the solutions to provide these problems. All these need to be shared properly between headquarters and subsidiaries. Then decision flows. So as we know, all the decisions for the branches or subsidiaries will be done by the headquarters. So it should be properly provided timely decisions must be taken by the headquarters, and even unbiased decisions are also very, very essential. So they should not neglect any subsidiary irrespective of its profits, or irrespective of its operation, irrespective of the geographical distance, irrespective of the any personal hatredness, etc. They should have a decision, unbiased decision for the well-being of the organization. Next one is the coordination of the activities. So it may be a smaller micro activities or the macro level activities. All the activities in the organization, both in headquarters, that is in the home country, as well as subsidiaries which are operated as branches in other countries of the world, must be properly coordinated. And for that reason, it is very essential to appoint the managers or executives, okay, in order to look after all 5 functional departments of finance, marketing, production, HR and R&D. So control of operations. So control of operations has to happen properly between headquarters and subsidiaries. So authorities, who are all the authoritatives and authorities, how it flows, what kind of the hierarchical pattern that is followed, what are the decisions that they have formed, what are the policies that they have initiated, all these need to be properly known between these two. Then strategy formulation. So strategies, sometimes if we are talking about strategies, uniform strategies may not be possible. Sometimes yes, it is possible, and sometimes it may not. The reason is, if the organization is spread to far off countries of the world, suppose if the business is expanded so widely, it is becoming a hurdle in the form of geographical distance. Uniform strategy for the business activity is not possible because of the geographical distance. As we know, each country is different. So policies of the government in respective countries will be different. Organizational activity also varies. And also, if we are talking about the customers, if we are talking about the human resource requirement, choice and preferences of the customers, everything, each and every aspect will vary in the market. So strategies need to be always custom made. So it has to be created individually to respective markets, respective countries of the world, so that each and every subsidiary that is operating in different countries of the world, different markets of the world, will be given individual attention, and so that every subsidiary will survive and succeed in their business activities. So that is what the relationship between headquarters and subsidiaries. Next topic we are going to discuss is merits and demerits of multinational companies to multinational companies. Here actually we are going to discuss two subtopics. One is merits and demerits of MNCs to host country, and merits and demerits of MNCs to home country. So please keep it in the mind. When you get this question in the exam, suppose, you have to check whether you are answering for the host country or home country. Based on the question what they have given, you have to answer. Suppose if it is merits and demerits of MNCs to host country, so you have to write these points what I have given in the slides. Suppose if it is merits and demerits of MNCs to home country, I have given in the other slides. You are going to see that also. So that you have to write. So you can definitely copy these slides if you want to write the answer for this question. And this is also very important topic from this chapter for section C question. So under this first one, what we are going to discuss is merits and demerits of MNCs to host country. Under merits, so first one is, because of the growth of MNCs, level of industrial and economic development has increased in the host market. So you can take our country itself. Suppose if our country becomes a host country, for so many Western companies that have stepped into our country for the purpose of their business expansion, it is not only helping them but also helping us to increase our industrial development. So industrial development, secondary sector in our economy has increased considerably, improvised considerably, and that has led to increase in the economic development. So we are experiencing that growing opportunities, job opportunities, increase in the income, in per capita income, increase in the national income, increase in the GDP growth rate, increase in the level of economic development, sustainability in all all the sectors of the economy, that is primary, secondary as well as tertiary sector, is mainly because of the growth of MNCs in our country. So that is the first merit. The second one is there is an increase in the investment level, increase in the employment income. That's what I explained it now. Level of income has increased, per capita income has increased considerably in our country. That is mainly because of the growth of MNCs. The third advantage to host country is we are getting the latest technology from other countries of the world, mainly because of the collaboration that we are having through this international business after globalization. It may be in the form of these MNCs, or it may be in the form of joint ventures or mergers, etc. So we are able to import the latest technology, sophisticated technology, advanced technology from other advanced countries of the world. Then it is also helpful in getting the sophisticated managerial techniques. By looking into the practices of MNCs, we are able to, as you would have studied about McGregor's theory X and Y. So now many companies have adopted theory Y, because they feel that yes, if we give little bit of liberation to freedom to employees, we are going to get more and more benefit. You can take this example itself. Due to lockdown, people are sitting and working from home, but their productivity has increased because they know what they know what to do, how to complete their task, and that is leading to the growth in the productivity. So that is how people are learning more and more sophisticated managerial techniques because of the practices of multinational companies. Then it is also helpful to domestic suppliers of various inputs. They are also providing market for these domestic suppliers, because these MNCs do require the raw materials and resources for undertaking business activities. So that is also helping their business growth, helping in their business growth. Then next one, MNCs break protectionism. See, protectionist policy refers to restrictions in the international business. So restrictions in the international business refers to one-sided business activity where we promote for the exports, but we substitute the imports. We don't provide any support for the import, but instead of that we are going to produce the products and services which is required in our own country. So that kind of protectionist policy is no more practiced in our country. This is leading to competition among domestic companies, which is enhancing. So inevitably, because of the competition, they are also increasing their capabilities to pose a competition to those MNCs which are stepping into our country, and that is how it is helping to increase in the competitiveness. Then the next one, domestic country can also make use of research and development. In the one of the previous points itself, we discussed that the latest technology is also achieved or gathered all around the world from Western advanced countries, sophisticated technology. We talk about German technology, we talk about Japanese technology, which is world's number one, which is also available in our country because of the growth of MNCs. Then host country can also take the advantage of foreign culture. See here, if we are talking about this foreign culture, a positivity or a positive aspect of foreign culture is also learned because of the presence of MNCs, where many people are coming here. We are understanding the different positive aspects of their culture, like maybe hard work or efficiency or competitiveness, capabilities of work. All these are understood very well due to the presence of MNCs. Then we also can talk about the reduction in the imports, increase in the exports. Because of the increased competitiveness, increased productivity, the goods and services are exported to other countries of the world more than the imports. Because of this, the receipts earned, that is the foreign exchange earned through exports, is increasing, which is also leading to development or growth of GDP in our country. So always a coin will have two faces. We discussed about the positivity of the MNCs, growth of MNCs, and now we are going to discuss the demerits. So demerits, if we are talking about, it is going to be a restriction for the national autonomy and sovereignty. So it will not accept the national sovereignty or autonomy or the freedom that is restricted to a national boundary. So there are various policies that need to be changed, or it need to be reframed in order to make MNCs to feel more comfortable in our in any country, for that matter, in the host country. So host government have to take that kind of step in order to provide a congenial environment for these MNCs when they step into their country. So that is going to be one of the problem. So goal of profit is a major objective of MNCs. So definitely when they step into any country, we think, okay, there is a drastic increase in foreign direct investments, but at the same time we are not considering how much profit they are reaping from our country and taking into their country. So there will be definitely inflow of capital, but outflow of profit is always more than the inflow of capital. That is also not considered. So that is the drawback that we are talking about. Then MNCs all may adopt ethnocentric approach. So if we are talking about ethnocentric approach, they will give more prominence to their human resource. So if they start, this is conceptually true, but still I have to talk about this in this topic. So if they adopt an ethnocentric approach where they start recruiting their own personnels for the work in other countries of the world, wherever they are operating as MNCs, so that also creates one more problem of unemployment in the host country. If they do that, it creates that problem. Okay, so natural resources of the host country will be destroyed because they are utilizing the raw materials and resources in the host country, which is going to be one of the problem created for host country. It not only destroys the natural resources and factors available, but also they are not environment friendly, because they don't think about the environment. They may not think about the environment aspects, so that may also becomes one of the problem. So it is also one of the problem which is creating an extension of oligopolistic practices. Oligopoly refers to few sellers, few brands available, and there will be few number of buyers as well. So here oligopolistic market is not as big as imperfect competition, but still some of the leading firms, highly branded ones, will decide on prices and quantity. So others, subordinates, need to follow the same. So same thing happens if more and more MNCs are present in the host country, because suppose if many MNCs are there, because of their market financial superiorities that they are enjoying, they do have higher brand value. They are going to rule the market. They are going to decide the prices for the commodities and services. That is going to disturb and destroy the host country's business activity. Okay, so these are some of the demerits that are there. Similarly, we do have some more, like political interference. They may, as they are financially strong, they may also intervene in the political aspects of the host market, which is also not good for country's freedom as well. Okay, so that is about the demerits of MNCs to host country. The next topic is merits and demerits to home country. See, this is what the merits and demerits of MNCs to home country. So what are the merits? Let us see that now. It creates opportunities for marketing of the products in the other markets. Okay, when they produce products and services after meeting the home demand, or suppose if they are capable to produce more and more quantities of goods and services, they are able to sell it throughout the world. So it is an open opportunity for them to sell the products and services in other markets. Then it creates employment opportunities, because as I told you in the previous point, increase in the productivity leads to increase in the sales. For meeting the requirements, they have to increase the number of human resource. employed in the organization. So in that way, they are going to create the employment opportunities. Then industrial activity becomes very brisk in the home market because of increased number of markets throughout the world. Then it contributes to favorable balance of payment. So balance of payment where total earnings will increase as compared to the payments. So that we are going to discuss in chapter 6. So balance of payment of the home country will become positive. That is also a good sign for the economic development of the country. And home country can also get the benefit of the foreign culture, which we also discussed in the previous topic. They also know, see, there are various examples which can be given here, like it may be Indian Ayurveda or Indian lifestyles that are also adopted in various people in the other countries. They also have adopted yoga therapies, and these things are meditations. All these are becoming more and more famous in the Western countries, mainly because of the free movement of the people between different countries of the world. Then we have merits and demerits of MNCs to home country. So here it is transfer of capital. So as we know, when MNCs are spread throughout the world, they are also taking the capital from the home country and invest the same in the host country. So initially they have to face the problem of scarcity of capital in their respective countries, because more and more financial resources in the form of capital is taken from their country. So that is leading to scarcity of capital. This is also really a big problem even to those countries who call themselves as capitalist strong countries. They cannot say, yes, we are not facing any problem. Yes, they do face the problem, because most of the MNCs which are coming out of their country and spreading in other countries of the world, establishing their MNCs in other countries, host countries, they are taking a large sum of large capital from their country and investing it in the other country. That's a problem. Then next one is, it will create unemployment problem in their country. So here the point says, may not create employment opportunities. America is one of the example, because they have outsourced so many streams of business activity to the rest of the world. Now their people are facing the unemployment problem. That is one of the example what we can quote here. Then they may neglect the home country's industrial and economic development, definitely, because they have outsourced their business activities to the other countries of the world, thinking that it is very easy to get the work done from outside. Yes, it is very easy, but at the same time they are creating all the related economic problems, that is in the form of unemployment, poverty, low per capita income, low national income. All these are becoming very high, and at the same time, in contradiction to this, other aspects like industrial growth, economic development is in the downfall. So economic problem is increasing. At the same time, economic activities are coming in the descending order. That is real problem to the countries. Then it may bring culture from the foreign countries that may even affect the home country's culture. So there may be eradication of the native culture. So India is an example you can quote here, where people are learning so much of foreign culture. No offense, but still they are not understanding the importance of our own culture, which is very, very prominent in the world. We are not understanding, others are understanding more than us. Okay, so because of these disadvantages, some of the host countries have imposed control over MNCs for the free movement of their MNCs. I can give you one example. Like Obama once said, he was not willing to send more and more MNCs to other countries, because it is creating unemployment problem. Even after Trump became president, he also he's not supportive of this kind of free trade activities throughout the world because of the same problem. So that is what they are facing now. So that is about merits and demerits of MNCs to home country. Next topic is MNCs and India. So here we are going to discuss role of MNCs in India. So actually speaking, we have discussed all these points in the previous topic. It is just a collaboration of all those topics and put under this particular heading. So here first one is profit maximization. Because of MNCs, India is facing the positive aspect of profit maximization because of increased business activity. So our industrial activity has become brisk. Tertiary activities, that is service sector, has also become very, very strong in our country, and the per capita income, national income is increasing because of the increased job opportunities, employment opportunities in our country. So that is all. And also those who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs, they are also provided with good opportunities for investment, and also their profits are also increasing. That is what the point says. Next one is international network of marketing. So we have a good marketing network here because of globalization. After adopting free trade policy, it has become more convenient for us to market our products and services in the other countries of the world. So we have created a good network of marketing. It may be with the help of financial institutions who are supporting that, and even there are so many other non-financial institutions who are providing and creating this kind of marketing networks in the other countries of the world, which is really helpful for small scale and medium scale organizations and companies to market their products and services outside India. Then diversification policy, so product and process diversification, as well as the policies as well as the activities are also diversified. So it is distributed to different untapped areas, so in order to utilize the opportunities that are available throughout the world. Then we have location of central control offices. So MNCs diversify their activities to various countries, having their control over offices which provide them maximum global advantage. So like this, even India is also one of the location which they feel it is more profitable if they open their branches, their MNCs in our country. Then techniques to achieve public acceptabilities. See, MNCs adopt various techniques to get acceptabilities from the people of host markets. That is mainly because they want to create a well-known brand in the host market, and also they want to utilize the opportunities that are available in the host market. So India is one such location which provides all such kinds of positive aspects for the establishment as well as success of the business activities to MNCs. That is why India is so much attracted to the rest of the world to establish their business centers in our country. Then existence of modern sophisticated technology. So maximum global profit is one of the major objective of MNC. So any MNC for that matter, their primary objective is profit maximization. So MNCs develop modern and sophisticated technology in order to achieve this particular goal of profit maximization. And India require the technology, and it is one of the reason why India enter into such trade agreements with the foreign companies and countries in order to get latest technology. So Indian government also requested MNCs to provide their technology to Indian companies even before the economic liberalization, that is before LPG was introduced in 1991. But it became possible only after adopting all these three policies of globalization, privatization and liberalization. And after that it became possible for us to get all the technology required, because because it is not possible for our country so much to invest on R&D compared to other advanced countries of the world. Then business, not social justice. And as we know, MNCs are business but not social justice. So we have to believe that their superiority, they are more superior in the market as well as financial aspects. So it becomes inevitable for us to understand their requirements first, because they have invested huge sum of money into business activity in our country. So India being a developing country, the major requirement for India was when they adopted globalization was investment. So Indian government also provided various opportunities. Even they accepted FDIs and FIIs, so that we get more and more financial capital which is required for our country. So because of that reason, so many changes India also has adopted. Like as we discussed in one of the topic, like we have framed liberal business policies in supportive of the multinational corporations which are stepping into our country. We also formulated new exim policies. Even the economic policies are also amended in order to create a new scenario for the foreign companies which are stepping into our country. Okay, then unconcerned towards social responsibilities and business ethics. So MNCs are not so much concerned about the social responsibilities, but theoretically I say it is like this. Compared to native companies, they are not so much socially responsible. Suppose if I give an example of Infosys, they are into so much of philanthropic approach. They provide so much of they spend so much of money on the social services compared to the Western companies which are operating. That is mainly because MNCs are focusing for one major objective, that is profit maximization. So they are also even unconcerned about the environment. So cultural erosion is not at all concerned. Culture erosion, they don't think about the cultural erosion if in the host market. Okay, so these are some of the role that are played by MNCs in India. There ends this chapter. Thank you all. See you in the next chapter.